Hello everyone, welcome back to Pineview Acres. You just missed a really big storm. I had to turn the camera off because the thunder was just booming, so at least you can hear me now. In the first part of our tour, we visited the entry, the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, and the pantry. So I thought we'd start where we left off last time. This time we'll be seeing the smaller areas of the house, so the small hallways, the main bathroom, the three-season room, my little laundry, and my principal bedroom and ensuite. As we make our way through, I'm going to try to give you some visuals of how the rooms flow together. I know there's a lot of detail shots, but that's what this house is about, is the details. I'm all about details. But I know a few people had asked for that, so I'll try to give a little bit of the flow as we move along, but just know that some rooms are really hard to film, especially in a horizontal, so I can't really get the full concept of a room anyways for you, unless it's a really big room. So I'm going to try my best. So let's start where we left off. Oh no, actually where we started last time, in the entry. Let's get going. If you remember from the last episode, when you come through our front entry, turning to the left brings you into this hallway, which leads to two of our bedrooms and the main bathroom. In the entry, I used vertical V-groove paneling on the walls, but as you enter the hallway, the ceiling drops from 12 feet to 9 feet, and I wanted to do something just a little different to distinguish the two spaces. So I used the same V-groove paneling, but I turned it horizontally. It still connects back to the entry, but changing the direction gives this hallway its own character and adds some texture and interest to what could have otherwise been a fairly simple space. The stairs here lead down to the basement. I wanted them to feel as though they belonged in an older home. So rather than anything too modern, I chose traditional turned posts and had the wood stain to coordinate with the floors. The wall alongside the stairs is actually something I haven't finished yet. Eventually, I'd love to turn this into what I'm calling my family treasure wall. I've been collecting family photographs and heirloom pieces, both old and new, and my plan is to bring them all together here in black and white, using an assortment of interesting frames, possibly antique, some new, and change to different sizes throughout. There are two bedrooms off this hallway. The first one, just to the left, is the room I use as my office, and the bedroom at the opposite end belongs to my daughter, so we're going to keep those spaces private today. But because you can see right down the hallway from the main living areas of the house, I wanted to create a little moment at the end of it. I had this antique washstand for years. It actually sat in a small nook in the entryway of our previous home. And when we moved here, it happened to fit perfectly into this spot. I layered two pieces of antique art above it and added a brass picture light. In the evening, when that little light is on, it gives such a beautiful glow at the end of what is otherwise quite a dark hallway. And on the washstand are a few of my treasures. These are two antique cigar boxes, and they're pieces I've collected over the years. But this little pocket watch is particularly special to me. It belonged to my papa, and it's something I absolutely cherish. I love being able to incorporate things like this into my home. Pieces that aren't here simply because they are beautiful, but because they carry a bit of family history with them. Right beside the little washstand is the entrance to our main bathroom. And as you can see from the little black sign on the door, there's really no mistaking where we're going now. On the floor, I chose a warm gray elongated subway tile, and I had my tiler lay it in a herringbone pattern. As you probably noticed throughout the house, I'm all about texture. I find that adding texture can take a space to another level. It adds depth and contrast, and can take what might otherwise be a fairly flat or sterile surface and make it come alive. And I definitely carried that thinking into the walls in here. We don't actually have a separate powder room in this house. And when I'm designing powder rooms, I quite often use wallpaper. It's a space that your guests are going to use, and I always think it's an opportunity to create something that feels a little more special, cozy, and beautiful. Because this bathroom serves both our family and our guests, I wanted to create that same feeling here. I chose this dark, moody wallpaper with beautiful little birds throughout it and all these lovely warm shades running through the pattern. It completely changes the feeling of the room and gives what is actually a fairly simple bathroom so much character. I didn't have a custom vanity made for this space. I found this one at Restoration Hardware, along with the two vanities you'll see later in our principal bathroom. They were on sale at the time, and I loved the historical feeling of them. They have a very European-inspired form that I thought were beautiful and totally worked with the character of my home. I had the same quartz that we used in the kitchen installed on top, and above the vanity, I hung this ornate gold mirror. I love the way it stands out against the dark wallpaper. I flanked it with these elongated lantern-style sconces. They're a little more contemporary in their form, but they still have the feeling of an old lantern, so I thought they were a nice balance. Above the toilet are two little pieces of art that I found years ago on an antique day. And on the window, I added a simple pair of linen cafe curtains. They're nothing elaborate, but they soften the window and add another layer of texture to the room. For the tub and shower area, I kept them quite simple. I chose a warm 12 by 24 tile and had it installed in a stacked pattern. Then, rather than using a standard shower curtain, I had one custom made. Again, it was about adding softness and another layer to the space, and I loved the little bit of pattern play that it created against the wallpaper. For the plumbing fixtures, I chose polished nickel. There's quite a bit of brass around the rest of the home, so I wanted to do something just a little bit different here. Polished nickel still has a beautiful warmth to it, so it works really well alongside gold and brass accents. But against this darker room, it has just enough contrast to stand out. It's a small bathroom, but I think it's a good example of how you don't necessarily need a large space or a lot of complicated design elements to create a room that feels layered and special. And now we're back through the main part of the house. And just over there, through the living room, is probably one of my favorite spaces out here at Pineview Acres, our 3-season room. This was one of those spaces that I knew I wanted from the very beginning when we were designing the house. I wanted something that felt connected to the outdoors, where we could sit and enjoy the property without necessarily being completely outside and eaten by bugs in the summertime. We use this room so much through the warmer months and even well into the fall when the weather cooperates. So let me show you around. When we originally designed this room, it was meant to be a traditional screen room, somewhere we could sit in the summer and on warm evenings. But after living here for a while, we realized just how much we loved being out here. From these windows, we can see right across the acreage behind the house. We often see deer in the fields, and we've even seen bush wolves and bears wandering across the property, along with tons and tons of turkeys. At night, we hear the crickets and the tree frogs, and during the day, it's filled with the sound of birds. So we decided we wanted to use this room much more than just a few months of the year. We installed these vinyl windows that stack almost completely open to create a screen room, or close up when the weather turns cooler. Between those and the fireplace, we can use this space from early spring right through to fall, and sometimes even into January. Daryl clad the walls in a rough-cut board and batten, which gave the room a wonderful, cozy, slightly rustic feeling. We added a contemporary electric fireplace with a remnant of an old barn beam above it, and I hung these 2 large black wicker chandeliers. I love the contrast of the black against all of the warm wood. The old metal lanterns beside the television are pieces I've had for years. I used to bring them out only at Christmas, but they've finally found a permanent home here. At night, with the candles lit and the chandeliers glowing and the fireplace on, this room is incredibly cozy. But what I really love about this room is that almost none of the furniture was actually chosen for it. It's become a bit of a home for all of our misfits. These wicker chairs actually belong to our outdoor dining set, and they've somehow migrated in here. This old red table is one of my favorite pieces. I believe it was a dining table that someone cut the legs down to turn into a coffee table. It's scratched and banged up and has all the wonderful patina that I love. It was in the living room of our previous home, but was too small for our living room here, so out here it came. And I think it's actually where it belongs. The little antique desk was another antiquing find, but the chair beside it might be my favorite rescue. We actually spotted it lying in the woods along a shoreline near our cottage. I made Daryl pull the boat over so I could get out and retrieve it. He thought I was completely crazy. It's rough. The seat is broken and you definitely don't want to sit on it, but I absolutely love it. The little round antique table in the corner is another piece with a history. I found it years ago at an antique shop just outside of Perth with my mom. I brought it home, I stripped and refinished it, and for years it sat beside the bed in my room. I didn't have the right place for it inside, so eventually it found its way out here too. Even the faux tree was actually an original purchase for the living room. I didn't love it there, so you guessed it, out here it came. And beside it is a collection of antique walking canes that belonged to Daryl's father. He loved collecting them, and now I love having them here. So although this room was never really decorated with a grand plan, somehow it's become one of the most personal rooms in the house. It's filled with things we've collected, rescued, inherited, and carried with us from other homes. There are a little bit of misfits, but together, I think they're exactly right. And then there is this sectional. This was a marketplace find. It's actually an IKEA sectional that was being sold by a college student in Ottawa. I have absolutely no idea what this sofa saw during its college years, and I'm probably better off not knowing. But it was a perfect size for the room, so I sent poor Daryl down to get it. He had to take the entire thing apart, piece by piece, and carry it down her dorm stairs. Well, he was not a happy camper. We brought it home. I bought brand new slip covers for it, and honestly, for what we paid for it, it's perfect out here. And I know I'm probably going to replace it at some time in the future, not for a few years, but at this point, if something gets spilled on it, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. So it's perfect as it is. Okay, so now we're going to head over to the other side of the house. Just off the kitchen is a little hallway that leads to the garage. There's not a lot to show you there, but I did want to include it because it is one of the small, hardworking spaces that we use every day. So let's head over. Because this hallway was visible from the kitchen, I still wanted it to feel like it belonged with the rest of the house. I added this beautiful wallpaper, it's a William & Morris, to give it a little bit of character, along with a simple bench and hooks for everyday things. And of course, I couldn't resist adding a little artwork. It's a tiny space, but I think even these little transitional areas deserve some attention. And just off the hallway is our laundry room, so we'll head in there next. The original plan for this room had a side-by-side washer and dryer with a small amount of counter space and storage. But once I started looking at everything I wanted to fit into such a small footprint, I knew I was going to have to be a little more clever with the layout. The first decision was to go with a stackable washer and dryer. By stacking them in the corner, I gained enough space to create an L-shaped work area around the rest of the room. And because the sink is one of the first things you see through the doorway, I wanted that area to be pretty. I added another little farmhouse sink with base cabinetry for storage and topped everything with this beautiful dark quartz. The countertop continues around the corner and stops at the washer and dryer. Under the section, I intentionally left the cabinet open, while keeping the countertop above free as a folding area. Above the sink, I have a floating open shelf for a few decorative pieces and upper cabinetry for additional closed storage. Then, on the right side, I took full advantage of the height of the room and added open cubby storage from counter right up to the ceiling. The baskets hide away all of the things you don't necessarily want to look at in a laundry room. And this little metal basket underneath is where I put my delicates waiting to be washed. On the opposite wall, I used the V-groove paneling again, but I deliberately kept this area open. I wanted somewhere to display some artwork, of course, and rather than making everything perfectly symmetrical, I added this vintage-style brass sconce, slightly off-center, and paired it with two antique paintings. I love the way this little grouping turned out. It's slightly unexpected for a laundry room, which I think is why I like it so much. And because apparently every laundry room needs a lamp, at least in mine, I added this little one in the corner beside the sink with a scalloped shade. I leave it on in the evening and it gives the room such a pretty glow. The door itself was another little design problem we had to solve. I knew I wanted some glass in the laundry room door because really, if you're finally going to have a pretty laundry room, you might as well be able to see it. The laundry room could only have a standard height door. Well, that created a problem because visually, the door in the principal bedroom right beside it is much taller. So I added a glass transom above the laundry room door. It brings the overall height up to meet the bedroom door beside it. So even though the actual doors aren't the same size, they visually feel like they're balanced. It's one of those little design details you may not immediately notice, but without it, you absolutely would notice it. So after all those years of doing laundry in dark basement storage rooms, I finally got my pretty little laundry room. But the joke, of course, is on me, as Daryl probably spends more time in here doing laundry than I do. Apparently, I designed a beautiful laundry room for him, or as the kids like to call this room, Dad's naked room. Oh well, but I'm not complaining. And right next door to the laundry room is our principal bedroom. Now, if you've been here since my very first episode, this room is probably going to look pretty familiar to you. I spent quite a little bit of time in here in that episode, so you've already seen a lot of it. But I didn't really give you the full tour or talk very much about the design details. And there are quite a few things in this space that have a story. My bulldog is snoring in the background. If you hear that, I'm sorry. So today, let's take a closer look. This room was probably one of the best examples in our home of how much I love mixing old with new. The bed itself is new, and it's actually our first king-size bed. It nests perfectly between the two windows on the back wall, so when we were building the house, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to finally make the move to a king. I went back and forth so many times over whether I wanted a beautiful old-style turnwood bed or something upholstered. I still love the idea of a turnwood bed, and who knows, maybe someday, but with all the harder surfaces and antique pieces I knew I wanted to use throughout the room, upholstery just seemed right. I chose a fairly contemporary, low-profile bed, but because it's slip-covered, it still has that softness and relaxed feeling I love. And then I found it in this beautiful soft blue fabric, which really set the tone for the rest of the room. The bedside tables are also a newer piece. I actually found them on Wayfair a couple of years ago, before we moved into the house. I loved the bobbin-style turned legs and their soft color. I topped them with these oversized black lamps. The bases have a beautiful texture to them, and the linen shades soften the black and give us such a lovely light in the evening. The dresser, on the other hand, is definitely not new, and it has traveled around a little bit before finally ending up here. I actually originally found it at Tin Barn Market in Almont, back when they used to carry a lot more antique furniture. But I didn't actually buy it for myself. At the time, I was designing model homes, and I purchased this for a model I was creating in a beautiful beach style. I had mixed quite a few traditional and new pieces with antiques throughout the house, and this was one of them. When the model homes were eventually ready to be sold, my clients would usually give me the first opportunity to purchase any of the furniture they were going to sell. And to be honest with you, I couldn't stand the thought of this piece ending up in a clearance store somewhere. So guess what? I bought it back. It then sat in storage for years until we finally built this house, and I found the perfect place for it in the bedroom. Unfortunately, somewhere along the way, either during those years in storage or during one of the moves, it lost one of its little wooden tassel pulls, which I love. Eventually, I'd like to hunt down some antique replacement, but until I find the right ones, I'm quite happy to leave it imperfect. Above the dresser, I've started yet another little art collection. This one is a mixture of old and new pieces, but you'll probably notice something about quite a lot of the artwork throughout our house. I've always been drawn to art depicting strong women. There are portraits and figures of women tucked into different rooms throughout the house, and there are quite a few in this room. So, in the interest of giving Daryl at least a little representation, the artwork above the bed features these wonderful silhouettes of rather important-looking gentlemen. They're French, and their names are actually handwritten on them, although I've never been able to completely decipher the writing. I found these on Etsy and had them framed. Originally, I brought them out for Christmas because I thought they worked beautifully with what I had planned to decorate in the room. But when Christmas was over, I liked them so much that I left them right where they were. And because the bed is low profile, we really needed something large enough in scale to fill that large wall. These ended up working beautifully. If you watched the first part of the house tour, you might remember me talking about the antique mantle. I actually bought it years before we built Pineview Acres. My original hope was to use it in the living room, but once the house was built, the scale simply wasn't large enough for that space, so it ended up here. We added a subtle tile around it and an electric fireplace insert, and honestly, I think this is exactly where it was meant to be. And I didn't touch the mantle itself. There was no way I was going to strip it or refinish it. Every little nook, dent, and scratch is part of its history, and that's exactly what makes it beautiful to me. Above it is our television. Although, when it's not in use, it becomes a piece of art. It does look a little out of scale at the moment, but no, that's intentional. My plan is to eventually add a substantially carved wood frame around it, which will give it a more presence and make the proportions feel right against the mantel. That's another little project we'll hopefully get to do in the future. On top of wallpapering, I've always wanted to wallpaper this room, so maybe we'll do that too. On either side, I added black sconces with hammered brass detailing and soft linen shades, and tucked into the corner beside the fireplace is this chair. It was actually in the living room of our previous home, and it's well over 10 years old. I had it reupholstered in this light linen, slip-covered fabric, and it happens to tuck perfectly into the corner. This is one of my favorite places to sit with a coffee on a winter morning or a glass of wine and a book on a cold winter's evening. The little round table beside it is new, but the brass floor lamp is another piece I've had for years. I bought it at Restoration Hardware a very long time ago, and it's one of those pieces I've just continued to find a place for. And above the chair is something much more special to me. This antique picture of a woman belonged to my mother. It hung in her bedroom for many years, and I love that it hangs in mine now. And on the opposite wall are two more vintage pieces that I picked up on one of my antique days. But probably the most striking architectural feature in this room right now are these large antique European doors. We mounted them on sliders to create the entrance into the bathroom, and they bring so much warmth and character into this room. They have such a presence here, and I love the way they frame the entrance to the bathroom. And through these doors is your first glimpse of what I think might be the most calming space in our entire house. When I was designing this room, one thing I knew from the beginning was I wanted the entrance to perfectly frame the clawfoot tub. That's really where the idea for the antique French doors came from. When they were open, they almost became a picture frame around the entire view: the tub, the stone wall, the window, and the chandelier. The large window above the tub looks out over the property, and I added the simple linen cafe curtains for some softness and privacy. And once again, one of my favorite things is seeing them move in the breeze when the windows are open. But that stone wall behind the tub was never actually part of the original design. Originally, the wainscoting you see throughout the bathroom was going to continue behind the tub. Then one day I came to sight where the mason was finishing the stone and the front of the house and the fireplace. I noticed he had some stone left over, and I thought, geez, I'd hate to see that go to waste. So I started wandering around the house, trying to figure out where I could possibly use it. I walked into this bathroom, looked at the wall behind the tub, and thought, why not put it here? Wouldn't that be spectacular? We asked the mason if he thought there would be enough to cover the wall, and he said possibly. Well, there was, just barely. I think there may have been one piece left when he was finished, and luckily, the pieces we had worked, because with natural stone, that isn't always guaranteed. It honestly felt like it was meant to be. We also had a remnant of the old barn wood we used elsewhere in the house, so we mounted it along the ceiling above the stone, almost like a trim piece. It brought in another layer of texture and warmth. Above the tub, I kept the chandelier very simple, just a beautiful European-style fixture that wouldn't compete with everything around it. And of course, there's another woman watching over the room. This portrait used to hang in the dining room of our previous house, and she's yet another one of those strong female figures I seem to be drawn to. The wainscoting wraps around the rest of the room in this beautiful soft sage green. For the floor, I kept things fairly quiet with a simple warm gray 12 by 24 tile laid in a staggered pattern. Bathrooms naturally have so many hard surfaces, tile, stone, glass, plumbing fixtures, that I think it's really important to find ways to soften them. That's why I use this large rug in front of the tub. Between the rug and the linen curtains, it softens all of those harder materials and really grounds this entire area. For the shower, we chose 2 full walls of glass. I wanted to keep this part of the room visually open, but it also allowed us to showcase the handmade subway tile inside. It's the same subway tile we used in the kitchen. On the floor, I went in the opposite direction and chose a much more intricate tile to add a little more interest, and then carried brass throughout the shower fixtures and details. And then we have our two vanities. As I mentioned when we were touring the main bathroom, I found all three of our bathroom vanities at Restoration Hardware when they happened to be on sale. These two became his and hers. I loved their warmth and worn wood and the slightly European feel that they had. Rather than traditional deck-mounted faucets, I chose wall-mounted faucets. I love the look of them, and they add another subtle European influence to the room. But my favorite detail might be these little brass plaques. Mine says ladies, Daryl says gentlemen. We found them at an antique store in Toronto, but they weren't even for our house. At the time, I was working on a commercial project, and I was planning on using them on the women's and men's doors. But then there were changes, and the bathrooms became unisex, so at that time I guess I didn't really need them. So they found their way here. I love when that happens. Above each vanity, I used these detailed carved black mirrors and paired them with brass sconces. Repeating the black and brass in the mirrors, lighting and artwork and fixtures helps tie all of these different elements together. And just off the bathroom is our walk-in closet. This may not seem terribly exciting to everyone, but we have never had a large shared closet before. In our previous house, I had the closet in our bedroom, and poor Daryl had to go all the way down to the basement, to what he called his man cave, to get dressed. Well, the kids called it the naked room again. So having this space now feels like such a luxury. And more than anything, I love that our bedroom, our bathroom, and closet all work together as this quiet little part of the house. It's such a calm place to start the day, and a really pretty, lovely place to end it too. Well, I think that officially brings us to the end of our Pineview Acres house tour. It's been really lovely sharing our home with you over the last 2 episodes. Not just the rooms themselves, but some of the stories behind them and the things we've collected along the way. As you probably gathered by now, our home is certainly not filled with things that were all purchased at once or chosen at once, simply because they work together. There are antiques, there are family pieces, things were carried from one home to another, marketplace finds, and quite a few things that somehow found their way exactly where they were meant to be. And I think that's what makes a home feel personal. There are still things I'd like to change, projects I'd like to finish, and lots of ideas I haven't gotten to yet. So although this may be the end of the official house tour, there's still lots more to share. From here, I'm looking forward to bringing you along for more of my everyday shenanigans at Pineview Acres, through the seasons, in the gardens, around the house, and whatever else we can happen to get up to along the way. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and especially to those of you who have been following along from the beginning. I'll see you in the next one.